Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Ground and Pound podcast, the show where, as always, we're hitting you with them elbows of knowledge. And UFC Fight Night, Taira taking on Park is done and dusted, and there must have been something in the water at the Apex, because these fights, this was probably one of the best Apex cards we've seen in some time. I don't know what happened, but we had banger after banger. You could make a case for Fight of the Night in many fights. And as always, if you're enjoying the content here on the Ground and Pound podcast, hit that like and subscribe button. As you know what we do here in the recap, we start off in the early prelims, head to the main event, talking about each individual fight, each matchup, what I thought of each matchup on the card and how the fighters performed, and kicking things off in the early prelim opener of this one was a good one. I got to say, this one set the tone for the card. We had Piera Rodriguez getting the unanimous decision victory. Oh, no, split decision victory. Yeah, we got to talk about that. One of these judges is clearly a Russian judge here against Ketlen Souza. And this one was crazy to me. I don't know how you didn't score maybe even every round, or 29-28 for Rodriguez here. Souza put up a good fight. It wasn't like she had a bad performance, but I don't know how this one ended up being a split decision. This one threw me off altogether when they announced the judges' scorecards. But Piera Rodriguez, the tale of this fight was the ability to mix in the takedowns, as you can see on her screen, on the screen here, and also as well in the clinch. She saw many times in the fight she would get to that tie clinch. She would really use the knees to the body. She was jamming the knees there into the midsection of Souza. I think that really paid dividends later on in the fight, and that opened up the takedowns as well. When you see a fighter tend to slow down, you tend to see her, being ripped to the body consistently. That's going to open up the takedowns later on. It's going to make it much harder to defend the takedowns and get off your back when you're already wounded and winded from all of the body shots. So I thought Rodriguez had a fantastic game plan here. We saw with Souza as well, I believe it was the second round, she did make a little bit of an attempt to come back. There was a few times where Rodriguez looked to be slowing down, but she bit down on her mouthpiece and did a fantastic job of staying in this fight. When we talk about the judges' scorecards, man, I don't understand, though, how you give this one as a split. I felt like Piera Rodriguez did enough to win the third and the first. You could make a case for Souza in the second, but I felt like Piera Rodriguez did enough in that second round as well. I had it 30-27, so it kind of surprised me that this was a split decision. But overall, great fight. And I actually said to myself when I was watching this one, I don't know if anybody else out there thought the same thing. I thought this was a pretty damn good fight that I didn't have a whole lot of expectation being a good fight. And this ended up being pretty much a set the tone fight for the rest of this Apex card. But Rodriguez getting the unanimous decision victory here. One of our not necessarily confident picks this week. I know Carlos and I both went with Rodriguez, but she showed an ability to mix in the takedowns, and that ended up being the difference maker. Well-timed double legs, as you can see on the screen there, would pay dividends, and that ended up being the tail of the fight, that and the body work. So I was impressed with Rodriguez. And next up, we had Rafael Estevam getting the decision victory here over Felipe Bunes. And this one just ended up being very interesting to me, which is why we're going to talk a little bit about this matchup in a little bit more detail. But Felipe Bunes, obviously, we said, very, very good off of his back. Fantastic jiu-jitsu, is willing to have people lay in his guard. And he showed he can be very dangerous. But Estevam showed he, is a little bit of a step ahead in terms of the grappling. There was one, the budgie choke at one moment as well, which looked a little bit dangerous. It looked like it could have been in. Only Estevam will know. But ultimately, the wrestling here ended up being the factor, and that's exactly what we know about Estevam, is that his wrestling is top tier. Not necessarily somebody who, gets a whole lot of submission victories. He doesn't necessarily get a whole lot of finishes, but he can control you on the ground. He can just beat you up and keep you there. And that was pretty much the tale of this fight. But the thing that coming into this fight, which I was really concerned about, was short notice, maybe about a week. Estevam tends to slow down, like a lot of guys do when they have that heavy wrestling style. He was able to keep going in this one, and he actually showed, he looked fairly, I don't want to say fresh, but he looked a lot fresher in this one, coming into the third round and kind of finishing the fight strong, which I thought was fairly impressive to him, which is why we're going to have to keep an eye out for him moving forward. Maybe the gas tank is fixed. Maybe he was coming in previous fights with injuries or weight cuts. I know that he missed weight in this one for 3 pounds, but it ended up not being too much of a factor here in terms of his conditioning. And Felipe Bunes really just didn't have an answer for the wrestling. Once the first round was over, Bunes tended to struggle a little bit. A lot of his fights do tend to finish early in the first. and it just looked like Estevam was able to take over from there with that wrestling and that top pressure. There was a few oh shit moments where, like I said, with that budgie choke, that it looked like Estevam might be in a little bit of trouble, but ultimately he weathered those storms. He was able to keep going in terms of his game plan, and ultimately that paid dividends here for Estevam, and he gets another win, still stays undefeated on short notice here. And ultimately, I mean, I wasn't confident in him just because of the gas tank, but there was never really much of a doubt in this one. So hats off to Estevam for getting it done with the wrestling, just like we said he would here on the Ground and Pound podcast. And next up, we had Austin Bashi fighting some guy that they found on the strip in Vegas that said that he wanted to fight for some toenail clippings and a couple of bucks. Honestly, this fight got dropped on us pretty much late, into the week last week. Austin Bashi obviously has fought in the UFC before. Obviously known as a finisher, good at taking the back, obviously, as you saw in this fight, and that was pretty much the tail of this one. But what did we really learn from this one? That's what I wanted to talk about here is, Austin Bashi, obviously not necessarily a household name yet. Seems like a nice guy, seems like a talented guy. He looked good in there in terms of his composure for a guy that's not necessarily had a whole lot of fights inside the big promotion. Obviously coming in, he looked to strike. He mixed in the grappling. He was able to get the takedown. And the milkman, the binman, whatever you guys want to call this guy that came in here to fight for toenail clippings and a couple of bucks, he gave up his back. Austin Bashi took the back, and he was able to find the rear naked choke, and that's all she wrote. Nothing too exciting about this one. I don't think it really taught us a whole lot about Austin Bashi, so we'll have to see how he does against some better, higher level competition. Maybe somebody that actually has a pulse might actually do us some good at finding out how good Austin Bashi is. But kid seems cool. Kid gets on the mic, says a few words, a few kind-hearted words about, glory to God, and how he, thanks his family and his coaches for his performance. So interesting to see moving forward with Austin Bashi what he does here, but ultimately getting the first round submission victory, kind of pretty much a no-brainer here as one of the biggest favorites on the cards, fighting some guy they pulled off the street. And next up, unfortunately, the dog of the week looked great in the first round here, man. I thought that Nick Klein was going to be able to get it done for us. The American blue-collar attitude was definitely on display here in the first round. Pulyaev obviously being able to get the second round finish. And I think that this one really just came down to the nasty body kick that Pulyaev threw at Klein. When you're going for those heavy wrestling approach, heavy clinch, really just coming forward consistently, it's going to tire you out. And obviously when you do attack the body when somebody is tired, it hurts 10 times more. It was on that liver side as well. I just think that Nick Klein just, kind of gave a little bit too much effort too soon. Ultimately ended up gassing. And once Pulyaev found that liver, tickled that liver, as Paul Felder would say, it really was all she wrote. The finishing sequence was nasty in this one for Pulyaev. It was kind of like I think he threw the jab, as you can see on the right-hand side there, followed up by a body kick. And he once Klein kind of wilted a little bit, fell to the ground. Pulyaev even tried to throw a kick as he was falling there. I thought at one point Taira might step in and say that it was an illegal knee. You know how terrible Taira is. We, especially on this channel, if anybody's watched a few of my videos about Chris Taira, you already know what I'm going to say about that fool. Anyway, Pulyaev ended up getting the finish. I felt like this was a good pick, especially when you watch the first round. Nick Klein comes out very aggressive, just like he did on Contender Series, gets his opponent down, takes the back, and I think he just made a little bit of a mistake. He rushed one of the positions. Pulyaev was able to get back to his feet, and it was kind of, I don't want to say downhill from there, but it's tough to take a 6'4" guy down to the ground. His feet are always touching the ground. Really, really impressive balance here from Pulyaev. He actually showed a pulse in this fight, unlike his previous fight. And I feel bad for Nick Klein, man. I think that he came out and he went a guns a-blazing in this one. And ultimately, he gassed out and got hit to the body. And that was pretty much the end for the gas tank and just for the pain tolerance here of being hit so heavy to the body with that kick. But we'll be back. Dog of the week, obviously, this week, coming back again for the Delidze Fluffy Hernandez card. So full highlight reel tape there for your enjoyment. Unfortunately, not able to get it done this week to make it 2 in a row. But I still like Nick Klein, man. The guy's tough. The guy's very durable. I think he just got a little bit too zealous over in the first round, and cardio failed him. Once you get hit to the body, that's all she wrote. And next up, we had Tresean Gore losing out here to Rodolfo Vieira, the black belt hunter. No black belt needed here. Obviously, the commentary team talked about here with Rodolfo Vieira that he moved over to the Fighting Nerds. I didn't see that in my research. That one kind of threw me off when they said that. I thought, oh, we're going to see a new Rodolfo Vieira here. He's going to come out, like a wild kickboxer. But Not a whole lot's changed up from Rodolfo Vieira. The only thing I will give him credit for is his boxing looked a little bit slicker here. You know, he used to just kind of fight behind a jab, not really throw the right hand a whole lot. Doesn't necessarily have the wrestling to get fights to the ground. His cardio looked a little bit better in this one, I will say that. The cardio and the boxing are probably the two improvements here that I will give Rodolfo Vieira credit for. And one of the things that surprised me here, which is why we've got the thinking emoji on the screen, is I'm surprised that Tresean Gore was able to defend so many takedowns and still not do anything. I don't know if he was so concerned about the takedowns of Vieira that he just didn't want to mount his own offense, but he just looked like he was there not to get taken down. He wasn't there to fight. He didn't tend to throw a whole lot back at Rodolfo Vieira. He was just so concerned about defending the takedowns. He didn't really give a whole lot back in terms of offense, which surprised me because Tresean Gore is a good athlete. He can crack. You know, you saw in his previous fight, I think it's Tulio in his previous fight that they had at one of the pay-per-views he was on recently. He could crack, man. He's got some power in the hands. He's athletic. He's definitely the better striker out of him and Rodolfo. So kind of surprised me a little bit that he wasn't able to let his hands go. Obviously worried about the takedown because he knew once he hit the mat that the floor is lava when it comes to Rodolfo Vieira. And Rodolfo Vieira, man, I mean, it's tough because the guy is world-level jiu-jitsu, but we see time and time again that if the fight can't get to the ground, if he can't find a way of getting it there, on the feet, he's just a fish out of water. He just looks uncomfortable. He does look a little bit more comfortable with the hands, but the second he fights anybody again with a pulse, anybody that looks, any remotely elemented of any sort of element of MMA, whether it be the striking, the grappling, whatever, anything that poses a threat for him, I think he's going to struggle. When you saw against a guy like Petrovsky that he fought recently, Petrovsky's not all that. He has decent grappling. He has, basic striking at a best, and he pretty much dog walked Vieira. So I'm interested to see what they do moving forward here with Rodolfo Vieira. Tresean Gore's never really been that talented or anything special to me. I just think that he's a decent enough athlete to give Rodolfo Vieira problems, but obviously that was a problem that he couldn't give Rodolfo Vieira this Saturday, and Rodolfo was able to do his thing in terms of using the jab, using the right hand. He was able to time the right hand a little bit better. The combinations were flowing. He looked a little bit more comfortable, but the Fighting Nerds have obviously trying to do his thing. Maybe he goes back to the Fighting Nerds, and we see a little bit more of an impressive performance from him in his next fight, but not high on either guy. This fight was kind of a sucky fight, if I'm being honest. And next up, we have Rinya Nakamura. Didn't need the wrestling here against Nathan Fletcher. This was what I talked about on the breakdown. Obviously, in his previous fight before this one, high-level wrestler, was potentially going to represent his country in the Olympic Games for freestyle wrestling. And he just didn't want to wrestle in his previous fight. He tickled the liver of Nathan Fletcher, showed that, he's got striking. I mean, the guy's a good athlete. He's very explosive. He darts in very well, but he just threw that nice little left kick to the liver of Nathan Fletcher. And you could see visibly in this one that Nathan Fletcher, it tickled the liver. He kind of crumbled a little bit. He backed off, and that was all she wrote. And Rinya went in for the kill, swarmed him, got on top, beat him up with ground and pound. First round TKO victory here for Rinya Nakamura, kicking things off for our slam of the week, which has been able to hit now for 8 of its last 11. So nice to get back in the win column there for that bet. But I was just worried that he wasn't going to come in here and wrestle, and he didn't need to. He proved me wrong. That's what we like. If you're going to get it finished, if you're going to get it done, at least get it done early so we don't have to sweat it. But I just don't like the fact that this guy doesn't wrestle and he has high-level wrestling. But if he's fallen in love with the hands and he's putting people out, you can't argue with it. Great athlete, great performance. And I thought this one was going to go a little bit longer with the wrestling, but ultimately, first round finish here for Rinya Nakamura, getting it done. And like I said, kicking things off for that first leg of our slam of the week with a green tick box. So we always like that. And next up, we had, honestly, I thought this one was going to be fight of the night until we get to the co-main and the fight before the co-main. But we had Danny Silva putting up an impressive performance here against Kevin Vallejos, or Vallejos. I'm not sure how you pronounce that Argentinian name. But honestly, this fight was fantastic. Very, very back and forth. I thought Danny Silva actually made a very good account of himself. I thought that this fight was a lot closer than maybe if you go look at the judges' scorecards. I want to say it was unanimous decision for Kevin Vallejos. And ultimately, Danny Silva did a good job, and great head movement. He was able to kind of pepper. He was talking talking a lot of smack, which I really liked. He mixed in some wrestling, especially early as well. Got a takedown late in the first. He looked impressive, and I think that Kevin Vallejos is somebody that he can really adapt to how the fight goes. He gets his read early. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Piotr Jan. And that's not a knock on Piotr Jan, or and I'm trying to be disrespectful to Piotr Jan, but I think he just kind of starts off early in the first and gets his reads, and then he builds into fights, because as the fight went on, he was able to time elbows crashing into the pocket. He was ripping more to the body, really, really ripping that body work, which opened up the hands upstairs. And Kevin Vallejos, man, he's somebody that I'm interested in. He wasn't able to get the finish here, but Danny Silva making a good account of himself. He is a tough fighter, and I don't think that he necessarily deserved the 30-27. I thought that you could make a case that Danny Silva maybe won the first, but all of the rounds were reasonably close, other than I think it was the second where Vallejos really started to take over. But ultimately, great fight. They even said on the broadcast team as well, when Vallejos was interviewed on the post-fight interview, do you think we got, fight of the night? And Bisping said, I think that this one's definitely the front runner right now. Boy, were they wrong, because if they could see into the future, that wasn't even close. But great fight. Like I said, the Piera Rodriguez fight at the start really set the tone for this card, and this one continued that momentum further up the card. But interesting to see how Vallejos does. He mixed in some grappling as well. He's not just a striker, but I'm impressed with this guy's hands, his body work, his boxing, and Danny Silva's hand speed and head movement was something to watch. So great fight overall. Definitely recommend going back and watching this one if you missed it. But great performance from both guys. Don't think it really affects Danny Silva's stock moving forward. And next up, we had Neil Magny getting the finish here. I believe it was, I want to say, the first round TKO. It might have been second round. I'm not sure on the exact round. It's late for me here in the UK here, guys. All right, just relax. It's like 2-3 in the morning when I'm watching Neil Magny fight at the Apex. Give me a break. Neil Magny, obviously a veteran gatekeeper guy, obviously a 38-year-old Zaleski dos Santos here. Both guys, have never fought, they said, inside the UFC. Both guys, obviously, in this matchup, had to settle a score here of who's going to be the veteran on the card to get it done. And Neil Magny got it done as the underdog. And when you watch this fight back, it kind of reminds me a little bit of the Chidi and Chukwueze fight, where Zaleski dos Santos kind of ducked his head. He struggled with the tie clinch of these taller, rangier guys. And Neil Magny was able to find that knee upstairs. And that was kind of the beginning of the end for Zaleski dos Santos. You could see when Neil Magny landed that right knee that Zaleski got a little bit wobbly. He kind of, it went all down the hill from there, basically. He was basically rocked. He was kind of defending himself and really just kind of surviving in there. And Neil Magny, I think he smelled blood. He pressured. He was able to get the takedown. He was able to take the back, flatten him out, and just beat him up on the ground. And hats off to Neil Magny, man. I mean, he's got, I think they said something like in the welterweight division, he's got the most fight time of something like 7 hours or 6 hours, which is crazy when you think about how long fights are and finishes and stuff like that. Hats off to Neil Magny, not taking anything away from him. I just thought that Zaleski dos Santos would have been a little bit more dangerous in terms of the power. I think he struggled to get on the inside of Neil Magny here with the tall, rangy Neil Magny. And ultimately, he got finished. And I got to say, man, Neil Magny, they said it's his birthday tomorrow. That's a good way to, cap off a birthday celebration by getting the dub in the Apex, getting that win money as well, that win bonus. And hats off to him, man, still getting it done at a late age. And Zaleski dos Santos is always dangerous. I think he just struggles with some of these taller, rangy opponents. And next up, we have Karol Rosa getting the unanimous decision victory here over Nora Cornolle. And this fight was interesting because when this fight first took place, I thought that Cornolle was going to be, able to kind of stand on the feet and really get her striking going, her Muay Thai style. And it showed in the first early round. I think Karol Rosa was surprised by the aggression here of Cornolle. She came out very aggressive, throwing heat. She clipped Rosa at one point, really busted up her left eye. And I think from then on, Karol Rosa was like, hey, this is MMA. I've got a full skill set here. Let's test the grappling. And her grappling was zero, as the Dagestanis would say. Her grappling is zero, and it showed. Karol Rosa, from then onwards, was able to get the takedown. She was able to transition from half guard into mount, look for the arm triangle, beat her up on the ground. And what I really liked, this is why I thought this performance was impressive from Rosa, was she didn't want to settle on top and hold her opponent down. And she was beating the absolute living French out of her. She was trying to get the finish the whole entire time. She was passing guard, looking for submissions, looking to sweep, look to get into better positions. And ultimately, every single moment she took where it came down to the ground and pound, she was taking that opportunity to punch her opponent to try to look for the finish. Even when there was 10 seconds left, she knew she couldn't get a submission victory. She was throwing elbows. She was punching to the head. And she was showing a lot of aggression in there. And it just goes to show. I like when fighters are not necessarily struggling in one element, whether it be the striking or the grappling, but they decide, hey, this is MMA. I'm going to mix in takedowns. I'm going to go to the calf. I'm going to mix in body work. I like when fighters show a full MMA skill set, and that's exactly what Rosa did here. Impressive performance to me. Thought it was good to be able to demonstrate all of her skill set here and ultimately show off that black belt. She wasn't able to get the finish, but multiple times there she was beating the absolute living French out of Nora Cornolle. And as always, if you're enjoying the content here on the Ground and Pound podcast, hit that like and subscribe button as we talk about not one, but two Fight of the Nights here. We had... This one was a great one, honestly. If you guys didn't see this one, check this one out. This was a great performance by Ribovics here, getting the unanimous decision victory here over Elves Brenner. And both guys obviously getting that 50K bonus. And it's not Fight of the Night with one, it's two. We'll talk about that in the co-main event. But back and forth, striking affair. Ribovics was able to put up a little bit more volume. And as we know with Brenner, he always comes back. And it was pretty much a Ribovics rounds 1 and 2. That's how I scored it. I thought Brenner came back in the third. You can make a case for him in the third. I felt like both guys knew that Ribovics was probably up, but we just know with Brenner, he just doesn't quit. He's shooting for takedowns. He's throwing, in the pocket. He's trading. He's got one hell of a chin. He took a lot of damage here from Ribovics. I saw it said something like 122 significant strikes for Ribovics. And obviously Brenner was able to take it. I mean, he dropped him early in the first, and from then on, I think Brenner just doesn't get going until he gets dropped. But impressive performance, man. Great fight. Honestly, this Apex card overall has been an absolute gem in terms of some of the ones that we've seen. And this fight lived up to the hype. I'm glad both guys got 50K here and it wasn't taken away from them because they definitely deserved it. Ribovics, always a dog. Obviously, we saw him against Daniel Zellhuber put up a great performance in the Sphere previously. Ribovics here in the Apex also putting up a great performance. But I felt like the tail of this fight really just came down to the forward pressure. We saw with Brenner, he was always fighting on the back foot. He was always moving backwards, darting around on the outside. Ribovics was always forward pressure, always pedal to the metal here. And that's what I think really got him the decision victory here. Ripping to the body as well. You saw at times he would come upstairs, rip to the body. Nice combinations. Great fight. 50K well deserved. And that brings us to the co-main event. And like I said, normally Fight of the Night suggests there's only one fight. There had to be two. Rebetsky. I don't know how it can be called Rebetsky. I'm with Michael Bisping. I don't understand how it can be ski. That doesn't make sense. But what do I know? A different language. But great fight overall. These two former teammates, both guys training over at American Top Team. Both did their camp at American Top Team. And ultimately, there can only be one big dog in the yard. And that was Chris Duncan. Great pick here from Carlos. Obviously, Rebetsky. He's just a dog, man. He's in every single fight. He's in a great fight. He's definitely a company man. Obviously, that fight against Mutabek Orobai was great. One of the best ones we've ever seen. This one as well. This one lived up to the hype. And this one really just came down to the damage I think Duncan did early. Duncan was able to really bust up the face with elbows. He did a good job of stepping into the pocket. He had the height and the range factor here against a guy like Rebetsky. And every time the shorter fighter would crash into the pocket trying to throw the boxing combinations, Chris Duncan would meet him with the elbow. And really just fight on the outside with throwing a lot of heavy high kicks and body kicks. And I think that really wore down Rebetsky. He landed a couple of head kicks that wobbled him a couple of times. Both guys having moments in this fight back and forth. 50K well earned. They're going to be sore tomorrow, though. I will say that. Definitely both guys busted up. Chris Duncan, 2 big cuts on his face. Rebetsky, a swollen eye and a big cut on his sort of between his eyebrows that you can see there. Great fight. Both guys deserve the bonus here. And honestly, definitely go back and watch this one in the Esteban Ribovics fight. Great fight. And that brings us to the main event of the evening. We had Tatsuro Taira getting the choke. I was surprised this one went as short as it did. I thought this one might go a little bit longer here, but the short notice Park stepping up obviously wasn't able to handle the grappling here of Taira. And when we saw this fight take place, I think a lot of people kind of weren't familiar with Park. He is undefeated. He does have a lot of skills, but obviously the grappling of Taira just showed that there's levels. But one thing I did want to point out here, which I talked about a little bit on the breakdown, is people kind of sleep a little bit on Taira's striking. He has power in the hands. He's dropped people before, and he had a really nice opening right hand, straight down the pipe, dropped Park early. That enabled him to really just take the back and use his grappling. And once the fight, entered into that grappling realm, Taira obviously dominated that first round, dropped him, took his back, wasn't able to find the choke. Coming out early in the second round, sprinted across the octagon, went for a takedown, took his back, and obviously you can see on the picture on the left-hand side here that he was able to take his back standing. He pulled him back, which was a little bit of a risky move. Like even the broadcast team said, it was a little bit of a risky move. He might have, kind of wore himself out or hurt himself doing it, but pulled himself back, was able to get the face crank victory, second round submission here against Park. And I'm right there with him. Give him Brandon Moreno. I don't want to see Joshua Van. I want to see Brandon Moreno. Let's see what he does against the Mexican Brandon Moreno. I think Taira is very good, very talented, a lot of power, great back takes. The guy is a wizard on the ground. Very, very fun to watch. No, shame in losing to a guy like Taira for Park. Obviously taking it on short notice as well. He put, he saved the event at the end of the day, gave him a main event, and gave Taira another opportunity to get back in the win column, and he did after that loss against Brandon Royval. But ultimately, again, an impressive performance here from Taira. You kind of expected him to get this one done, and obviously he rounded out our Slam of the Week, which was able to get it done again. Like I said, for our best bets here, he was able to cash for us here in Taira. I thought that he was going to maybe a little bit fourth, fifth round, maybe finish here when Park gets tired from the short notice step up. But ultimately, Taira showing that, he's impressive. He's a guy to watch still. And I think the hands are always improving as well. Still very, very young. And he gets on the mic and he yells. I don't know what he said. Maybe something about how good his mum's dinners are. They showed a little sequence there of his mum cooking all of his dinners for him. But nothing like a home-cooked meal and nothing like a dub here in the Apex. And as always, if you're enjoying the content, hit that like and subscribe button as I let you know what's coming on the channel this week. We've got Roman Dolidze taking on Fluffy Hernandez, the full card breakdown. That video will be early this week on a Monday. Check that one out. Full detailed breakdown of each individual matchup. Another Apex card. Hopefully it lives up to the hype of this one. And the dog of the week, my favorite betting underdog. Hopefully we can get back in the win column after Nick Klein, the blue collar, wasn't able to get it done for us. Full highlight reel tape along with why I like the underdog here. And as always, if you're enjoying the content, hit that like and subscribe button. And I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.